Hi everyone, welcome back to another Diablo Immortal video. So in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Necromancer Essence for Dark Curse called Ostalagg. This is the latest Dark Curse Essence to come in the game for Necromancer, and it's one that I hadn't had a chance to try out yet, so I'm just going to try it for the first time, have a bit of a read of it, test it out, see how it works, and see what we think of it really. So it's for the shoulder slot, and as I said, it's for Dark Curse, and what happens is Dark Curse marks its targets for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death, dealing 18,505 damage to nearby enemies. Damage increased by 90%, and if you're in an awakened slot you get an additional 10% cooldown for Dark Curse. So obviously this only comes into effect when that enemy dies. Other than that, it doesn't really do much else. What we'll do is we'll have a look at the skills tab and see if there's anything interesting mentioned there for this particular essence. So let's go down to Dark Curse. Okay, so here it is. There doesn't seem to be too much more information here. Basically, yeah, exactly what it says in the essence text. Dark Curse marks its target for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death. You've got the same damage written here as well, 18,505, and you get the increased 90% damage. I guess the extra 90% damage you get from Dark Curse is pretty decent, and I don't really use Dark Curse in PvE at all. I mainly use it in PvP. Well, I used to use it in a Dark Curse Corpse Lance Wraithform build in PvP. I no longer use that now. I go in with a fear build, which I'm calling the Scarecrow build. I've got a video up for that one. I find that so much more fun to use and really effective. I'm really enjoying that. So for those of you who are using this kind of build in PvP, I'll show you the typical essences which you might have, and for anyone else who might be interested. So if I look at the essence transfer NPC, in the headpiece you've got Studied Menace, which is where Corpse Lance now causes enemies to decay. On the chest I've got Skin to Bones. This is because I decided to take in Bone Spirits for this particular build, but you can take in Bone Armor as well and gather the corpses for additional damage to either have Bone Armor or Bone Spirits. I like to go in with Bone Spirits. And then you've got Fulsome Feeding, which is the Gravedigger's Curse. This is where Dark Curse now creates a miasma that follows you, damaging nearby enemies and continuously generating corpses. So this is the way you're going to generate corpses in this build for Corpse Lance to make use of them. And this is why you would usually typically take Dark Curse into Battleground and any other PvP environment. For the shoulder piece, you're helping out that Dark Curse essence that we already looked at by increasing the duration by 39% and also reducing the cooldown by 10%. On the weapon, I've gone in with Bone Spirits. Bone Spirits has a 20% chance to inflict fear on enemies lasting 2.4 seconds. And on the other weapon slot, I've got Bone Spirits damage increased by 19%. But as I said, this can be swapped out for Golem, and you can sort of take in Golem to do continuous damage with poison or burn. And then on the other slot, you can have Bone Spear, poisoning enemies as well. For the shield, it would usually be Vortex of Bones, where you've got that spinning bones that damages enemies when you get near them. This is really deadly. Or you might have something like Lower Creed, where you can use the corpses to generate lances that seek out random enemies. This one's a really deadly one to use as well, so you could probably have that in that slot. And for the other shield slot, you could go in with Wandering Wraith if you are using Bone Spirit build, or if you're using a Golem build, then you could equip one of the Golem essences to help you out there. So this would be a typical build that I would use Dark Curse in. Now the good thing about the new essence is it's in the shoulder slot. So you're not really cancelling out one of the major essences that's really required for this build. All you're swapping out is Dark Curse duration increased by 39%. So you're just going to have to sacrifice a little bit of duration and cooldown. And instead of that, go with Ostalagg, which is where Dark Curse marks its targets for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death. Now obviously the problem with this in Battleground is, to make use of this you need to be able to actually kill that enemy, so they do explode and deal damage to nearby enemies. But I guess the other good point is, as I said, is you do get that extra 90% damage with Dark Curse. That goes together nicely with Gravedigger's Curse. So then at least you've got 2 of the essences that are increasing damage for Dark Curse. So let's just quickly check the skills tab just to make sure both of those 2 Dark Curse essences do work together. Yes, they do. So you've got Dark Curse as a damage with 12 seconds cooldown. Gravedigger's Curse is there, where you've got the miasma that follows you, dealing that continuous damage and generating your corpses for your Corpse Lance. And then you've got Dark Curse marks its targets for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death, dealing 18,516 damage, and you got the extra damage there. Okay, let me just get rid of my legendary gems, just so I can have a bit of a quick test on the training dummy. Now, I know there was a couple of comments on my previous videos where there was mention that I was looking at the all damage rather than the breakdown, and that was mainly because I'd reduced as many variables as I could for the previous test. So for example, I'd broken up my set items so I don't get any ailments kicking in. I'd removed all of my legendary gems, so they'd all be 0. I didn't have any summons, so there's no damage coming from them. I had my pet on defensive mode, so basically I'd try to reduce as much external damage as possible and keeping the test consistent when I was looking at the total damage. And yeah, it is a fair point, but going forward from now onwards, all of the testing videos I'll also be looking obviously at the breakdown tab, just to show that there's definitely nothing else affecting, and the numbers I'm looking at are from the breakdown damage rather than the total damage. I'll look at the total damage as well, but I'll be looking at the breakdown damage as well. Okay, so I've removed my legendary gems, removed my runes. For the set items, I've got 2 pieces of Feasting Barons, I've got 2 pieces of Banquet of Eyes, I've got 2 pieces of Virtue's Urges, and there's no set properties active on the last 2. The pet's on defensive mode as well, and I have got the new Ostalagg Essence equipped. So let's just have a quick look if we notice anything with this mark. So what is this? There's like, oh, that looks buggy. That's not even displaying properly. But that's all I get. I don't know if that is a mark. Actually, if we have a look to see if it says 6 seconds. It's that bug where you have to go and come back again. That could be the mark. It's annoying because it doesn't actually display anything. I don't know if that's completely bugged. Let's try on the boss dummy. This one we have to walk away, come back. Yeah, it doesn't mention anything, but it says 6 seconds, so I'm not sure if that actually is the mark, but obviously we're not going to get anything happen with the training dummy because you need the enemy to die to actually see anything. So let's go into somewhere like Wortham to have a bit of a play around. Okay, we're in Wortham. Let's have a look to see what this mark looks like when we apply it on the enemies when using the Ostalagg Essence for Dark Curse. Now, I've got no other essences which cast a mark, so whichever mark we see, that is going to be the Dark Curse one. Ah, there we go. So you can see there's a light green flame, quite small, above the spider's heads. That lets you know that the mark has been applied. And obviously all you need to do now is kill those enemies within the 6 seconds, and they will explode and deal damage to all nearby enemies. There we go. You kind of saw the explosion animation. It's very quick. It's kind of like light green, kind of like a spirit. It's like a bone spirit skull kind of comes out the enemy, but I can definitely see the explosion. It's quite a nice animation actually. Someone kind of interrupted that test there. Let's go up here. Let's try it on these spiders up here. There we go. That's the mark. And that will last for 6 seconds. I guess if you've got some increased beneficial effect duration, you'll get slightly more than the 6 seconds. You might get 7 or 8 seconds for that mark to stay there. But when those enemies die, they will explode. There we go. You've got to see the explode animation there. I've got no gems on, obviously, and runes, so that's why I'm getting hurt really bad here. It's mainly just to check out the essence. So that's basically it. It seems like this is a nice one to use in PvE more than PvP, because in PvP it's just going to be too tricky with this essence, to be honest, because like I said, you have to first rely on actually being good enough to kill the enemies whilst you've got that mark applied within that 6 seconds, and then to actually make it even more useful, you need enemies to be near that player so the explosion can actually deal damage to the nearby player. So it's kind of a tricky one to pull off in PvP, in like Battleground. I think this is more of an essence which would be more useful if you've got a Dark Curse build that you're taking into something like Challenge Rifts to just take a whole group of enemies out, or Terror Rifts, Elder Rifts, anything like that. I think this essence would be better in an environment like that rather than in PvP. So that's basically what the mark looks like when it's on the enemies. And as I said, this might be quite nice if you're mixing Dark Curse with a build for something like Challenge Dungeons, Elder Rifts, Terrorists, stuff like that, where you've got a whole group of enemies, maybe even like the towers. If you're like farming towers and you've got loads of enemies there, at least you can mark loads of enemies at one go and then just cause that explosion to deal across multiple enemies. That's probably quite a nice idea. I don't think I'd recommend this as much for PvP. And if you are using Dark Curse in PvP, I think it's probably much better idea just to stick to the duration one, Linger Mantle, because then at least you get the increased duration of that Miasma that follows you to deal more continuous damage on the enemies and generating more corpses as well, which will help you with Corpse Lance. Okay, let's go back to the training dummy. So yeah, this essence is okay. It's nothing great, to be honest. There's so many other options you can go with on the shoulder slots for other skills, and if you did want to stick to a Dark Curse essence, I'd probably just stick to Linger Mantle just to increase that duration if I am going in with Dark Curse. And if you have other skills, there's so many other options to go with here. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, it's a really weak essence, and I was expecting to read a little bit more in the skills tab, because sometimes they put a bit more information in the skills tab, but there's literally just exactly the same text, so it doesn't do anything additional to what we exactly read in the essence text. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't really do that much test at the training dummy either, because obviously the training dummy isn't going to explode on death, so there's not really too many damage numbers you can get out of it. I mean, the only thing you can do is compare it when you have got the Dark Curse duration on, but most of the damage sources are going to come from other skills rather than Dark Curse. Now another thing is, on the leg slot, we've already got another Dark Curse essence which causes enemies to explode on death, which is this one, Soul Chime. So Soul Chime is where Dark Curse causes enemies to explode on death but no longer decreases enemy vision. So they've already given us a Dark Curse essence that, you know, causes explosion on death. You don't get the damage numbers here though, but if I go ahead and select that, so you can see how close together this is. So you got Dark Curse now causes enemies to explode on death, but no longer decreases enemies' vision. That's not a mark, it just causes enemies to explode on death. And then you've got the new one, Ostalagg, where Dark Curse marks its targets for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death. So it's interesting that they've got two very similar Dark Curse explosion on death essences, but on different slots. And obviously these are not going to work together either. There are so many Dark Curse essences that we can pick from in the leg slot. Now the only one that doesn't work with Ostalagg is Soul Chime, but all of the other ones do work together with Ostalagg when you look at it in the skills tab, so that's quite good. So you've got Unfurling Revival. If we scroll down, there's so many choices for Dark Curse. Got Mournful Destroyer, Limbs of the Lacrimal, Guided by Maggots, you got Empty Pit, and you got Draft Cryptic. So when you pick all of those, apart from Soul Chime, the rest of them will work nicely with Ostalagg. And let's say you did want to use the Ostalagg Dark Curse Essence to actually mark targets and cause them to explode. If you're in an environment where you've got lots of enemies on the screen at once that you want to take care of, you can pair it together with quite a few different essences and skills that will work nicely. And the other Dark Curse essences, for example, this one, I've just quickly knocked this together. I've got Dark Curse, and I've got it with a summon build with skeletons, mages, and golem. Now if we have a look at the essences, I've got Ostalagg equipped, where you've got the mark that gets applied, and then you've got the explosion on death. Now for that chest, you can go with None Elude, so enemies affected by your Dark Curse are weakened, increasing your critical hit chance against them by 19%. You get additional cooldown, and you just get that additional 90% critical hit chance increase. And then you can pair this with, say, Guided by Maggots, where you've got Dark Curse no longer decreases enemy vision, instead causing your minions within the area to frenzy, increasing their attack and movement speed. And then you've got an additional 7.2% cooldown. So you've got the cooldown back there with these three essences. And if you're using summons, you're going to be causing them to frenzy, making them do increased damage and increasing their attack speed. And as we've got a summon build, we can pair this nicely with the Decrypt Visage headpiece, where the command Golem roars every 2 seconds, extending the duration of your skeletal mages. And you can pair that with, for example, Black Wall, or maybe the untargetable mages. So you can have a large number of them spawning up at once, and your Golem keeping them up. And then you can pair this nicely with, say, the Devouring Golem that has an unlimited duration. You can have Pierce Hammer, which increases the damage done by your command skeletons, which are up, and they'll be frenzied as well. And then you can also go in with something like Beacon of the Lead, where your command Golem damage is increased by 19%. Or you can go with something like Soulfire causes burn to nearby enemies, causing them to explode. So now when you get your summons up and you cast Dark Curse, those summons are going to be frenzied. They're going to deal increased damage, and they're going to increase their attack speed. And when the enemy dies, it's going to explode and attack all nearby enemies. Now, the interesting thing to point out here is, if you notice, when you cast Ostalagg and you've got your summons up, it actually casts a mark on those summons. So if you have a look above the summons' heads, they've got that same mark, the little green flame. That is the Dark Curse Ostalagg being applied to them. So when your summons die, you're going to cause explosion on nearby enemies, and you could kind of use this to your advantage as well in a summon build. Now, for example, you can pair this together with 2 pieces of Vitu, so you get the increased duration of all beneficial effects, and you can pair this with a full Shepherd set, so you get the critical hit chance increase with summons, increased summon damage, and summons entering a frenzy. So this is one way you can sort of pair together an essence like Ostalagg, which you might not think about using in PvE with your summons, with this type of build. And it's just a nice way to sort of mix and match these essences together and just have fun with it. It doesn't have to be the best build, it doesn't have to be the best combination, but something that works. Okay, let's enter a challenge rift and just take a look to see how this might work, just for a bit of fun. So let's double check. Dark Curse is a buff. I've got Curse of the Dead, where I've got my minions going into a frenzy state. I've got Dark Curse marks as target for 6 seconds, causing them to explode on death. And then I've got enemies affected by your Dark Curse are weakened, increasing your critical hit chance against them by 19%. For mages, I've got Umbra Eater. For skeletons, I've got the increased damage. And for Golem, I have the Devouring Golem. And I've got Command Golem damage increased. And I've got the Golem roaring every 2 seconds, extending the duration of the mages. So let's jump into 4-1-2. I've not had a chance to do challenge rifts in a while. So let's jump into that one and have a bit of a play. So I've got my summons up, and if you can see here, if I cast Dark Curse, you can see the mark gets applied on the skeletons and the golem. So that's pretty cool. So if they were to die, they would explode. And if we just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that's the 6 seconds duration that we see. Now let's just have a look to see. Oh, that was hard to see. I was trying to look out for the mark being applied on these enemies, just like we saw in Wortham. But I think they're dying too quickly. I think the mark is being applied. Maybe if I go further up I can see. So it's nice having the summons in a complete frenzy state, and obviously I'm increasing my critical hit chance when I'm using Dark Curse as well. And then when the enemies do die, they cause that explosion. So I think the sensible thing to do here is like gather up a group of enemies, apply that mark, and just cause that explosion across as many enemies as I can. This might be something better to try out in something like Tower. There we go. I did see the mark applied on one of the spiders there. But the point here was just to show, if I do have a build like a summon build, there are ways where you can introduce Dark Curse into that type of build and take Ostalagg with you as well, if you do want to cause enemies to explode after being marked. Let's just take out this enemy here, the summoner, and exit. So yeah, that was basically just me just improvising and having fun with a build I can just put together with the Ostalagg Essence. So having Ostalagg, having Curse of the Dead, and having None Elude, and kind of mixing that together with a fun summon build, just to make use of Dark Curse and the summons. That's it for this video. Ostalagg, it's an okay essence. I'm not sure I'd use this in PvP, just because I have to make sure I defeat that enemy to cause that explosion and have enemies nearby for it to be effective. This is probably an essence which I'd take into PvE, with Dark Curse added with some other skills that I like, for example a summon build like this, and taking it into challenge dungeons and challenge rifts and Tower or something like that, and just having fun with it that way. So that's pretty much it for this video. Just having a quick first look at Ostalagg and just seeing what it's about, seeing what it's like, seeing what the mark looks like, seeing that explosion and how it might work, what sort of environments that I'd use this essence in. hope you enjoyed watching that one. Let me know in the comment section if you do actually plan to use Ostalagg and what kind of build you are using it in, and if you are using it in PvP at all. I presume you're probably not and sticking to PvE like I would suggest. So yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.